I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Short of a very, very dramatic event happening, Joe Biden looks like he will become the Democratic nominee. We'll show you what Bernie Sanders said today if you missed it. Here's what Bernie Sanders had to say after his defeat in Michigan, Missouri, Mississippi, Idaho. He did win North Dakota, and Washington State is still a lot of ballots to be counted. He's winning by a hair in Washington State. Let's listen to Bernie Sanders.
And the American people also know that we need fundamental transformation of a broken and racist criminal justice system, as well as a cruel immigration system that keeps millions of people living in fear. But it is not just the ideological debate that our progressive movement is winning. We are winning the generational debate. While Joe Biden continues to do very well with older Americans, especially those people over 65, our campaign continues to win the vast majority of the votes of younger people. And I am talking about people not just in their 20s, but in their 30s and their 40s. The younger generations of this country continue in very strong numbers to support our campaign. Today, I say to the Democratic establishment, in order to win in the future, you need to win the voters who represent the future of our country, and you must speak to the issues of concern to them. You cannot simply be satisfied by winning the votes of people who are older. While our campaign has won the ideological debate, we are losing the debate over electability. I cannot tell you how many people our campaign has spoken to who have said, and I quote, "I like what your campaign stands for. I agree with what your campaign stands for, but I'm going to vote for Joe Biden because I think Joe is the best candidate to defeat Donald Trump." End of quote. We have heard that statement all over this country. Needless to say, I strongly disagree with that assertion. But that is what millions of Democrats and independents today believe. On Sunday, I very much look forward to the debate in Arizona with my friend Joe Biden.
So, I'm not going to play the whole thing. Basically, Bernie Sanders went through the list of questions he would have for Joe Biden on the debate stage, which basically going down, what are you going to do about essentially all the problems you don't care about and your campaign does not care about. I think that Bernie Sanders, again, I believe, I'm not going to lie to you, I don't think Bernie Sanders is going to win the nomination. I think it's not mathematically impossible, but I think it would take a very, very massive event. The only way Bernie Sanders is going to actually win, which would be completely unprecedented, for Bernie Sanders to lose this many states and still somehow come back. Remember, there are right now over, I believe, there are 40%, somewhere around there, of states left to go. So there is still a lot of states left to go and the majority of delegates left to go. But it does not look good for Bernie. The states coming up on the 17th, Florida, it does not look good for Bernie. It does not look great for Bernie in a lot of these states coming up. Bernie Sanders, the problem with his campaign, and there's a lot of problems, some of them are because of Bernie Sanders and some of them are because of factors totally out of his control that I want to get into. Bernie Sanders, the biggest problem, and I've been saying this since 2016, and a lot of people haven't liked me saying it, Bernie Sanders is a revolutionary figure stuck in a Washington, D.C. politician's body. What I mean by that, Bernie Sanders is a revolutionist who refuses to stop calling his opponent my friend. Bernie Sanders is a revolutionist who refused, I have spoken with people in his campaign, refused to go after Joe Biden for lying about his civil rights record, for lying about being arrested in apartheid South Africa, for lying about participating in civil rights sit-ins. Bernie Sanders is a revolutionist who openly said, yeah, I think Joe could beat Donald Trump. Bernie Sanders is a revolutionist that vaguely talked about Joe Biden's, billionaires are funding him, but never went right at him, just like he refused to go right at Hillary Clinton, naming names. Bernie Sanders is a revolutionist that, frankly, was never willing to be the figurehead of a hostile takeover of the Democratic Party. Donald Trump, I don't think Bernie Sanders should be anything like Donald Trump. But if there's one thing you would want to copy from Donald Trump performed a hostile takeover of the Republican Party in 2016. There was a lot of racism. There's clearly fascism now. But Donald Trump did not call anyone his friends. He called them puppets. Donald Trump did not pull punches. He named names. And you want to know something? People could say, well, that's the Republican Party. Democratic voters maybe wouldn't like that. No. As Jen could tell you, who's in the super chat, and she studies psychology, people somewhere along the lines in politics made a decision to himself that he was not going to, quote, go what he perceives as negative. And let me give you a few examples. There is not a campaign, okay? Let's say it wasn't Bernie Sanders, right? Let's say it was, I don't know, Cory Booker versus Joe Biden. Let's say it was Beto O'Rourke versus Joe Biden. Let's say it was any of these people versus Joe Biden. Bernie didn't run this time. Do you think any of them would think twice about running ads against Joe Biden in South Carolina of him lying about being arrested in apartheid South Africa? Do you think any of them would think twice about running ads against Joe Biden, about him making up stuff, making up that he joined in civil rights sit-ins? Do you think any of them wouldn't find the families of incarcerated black men who have been incarcerated for decades because of the crime bill that Joe Biden wrote? You think any of them would think twice about doing ads with the widows of Iraq war soldiers? I say this not because I'm mad at Bernie Sanders or because I'm criticizing Bernie Sanders. I'm just telling you factually, Bernie Sanders has chosen as his operating principle not to go to that place. And that's why, it's not why he lost in 2016, and it's not the only reason he lost or he's losing right now, but it's a main reason. Because you want to know something? The majority of people, and when I say people, I mean voters, have no idea about Joe Biden or anybody's actual records. They have no idea about their lies. They have no idea about who their donors are. They have no idea about any of it. Let me give you and the reason they don't is because of things like this. Let's take a look.
About one thing that you said repeatedly on the trail, I think it's 3 times now, you said that during a visit to South Africa to visit Nelson Mandela, which I know was a very memorable visit for you, that you were arrested when you were there. Your campaign has come out since and said, no, you were separated from other people at the airport, but you did say arrest 3 times. Why?
Well, what I meant to say was I got off that. Look, I strongly strongly opposed to apartheid. I was one of the leaders. And if you doubt it, go on joebiden.com and look at the exchange between George Shultz and me in the Foreign Relations Committee. And here's the deal. I was with a black delegation, the CDC, the Congressional Black Caucus. They had me get off a plane. The Afrikaners got on in their short pants and their guns, led me off first, and moved me in a direction totally different. I turned around and everybody, the entire black delegation was going another way. I said, I'm not going to go in that door that says white only. I'm going with them. They said, you're not. You can't move. You can't go with them. And they kept me there until finally I decided they were clear I wasn't going to move. And so what they finally did, they said, okay, they're not going to make the congressional delegation go through the black door. They're not going to make me go through the white door. They took us, if my memory serves me, through a baggage claim area up to a restaurant, and they cleared out a restaurant. I felt strongly about apartheid, one of the reasons we were there. And long after this, when Nelson Mandela was freed and came to the United States, he came to my office. He was one of the most incredible men I ever met. He sat down in my office, thanked me for trying to all the work I did on apartheid. And so that's the context of it. When I said arrested, I meant I was not able to move. Cops, Afrikaners would not let me go with them, made me stay where I was. I guess I wasn't arrested, I was stopped. I was not able to move where I wanted to go.
So I do have one question. When this is all said and done, this whole campaign, if Donald Trump is reelected as president of the United States, what will it tell you about America?
The reason I played that clip, and I'm going to have a whole nother discussion about what needs to happen in terms of independent media, because I have very strong thoughts on that too. The reason I played that clip is Bernie Sanders, okay, and his team, Bernie Sanders felt that because people are progressive, the country is progressive. Even the people voting for Biden, believe it or not, are progressive on the issues. Bernie Sanders felt that he could win the debate and he could win the election just based on the issues. But that's not how politics works. You have to also convince them that the other guy or gal is no good. That's how it works, Bernie Sanders. And Bernie Sanders never realized, when you watch that clip, Joe Biden was lying through his teeth. Of course, he was not challenged. That anchor didn't follow up with him at all, because those anchors are not journalists. None of the people you see on television are real journalists. They are propagandists. They are paid to be the biggest super PAC in America for the Democratic corporate establishment. On the Fox side, it's the Republican corporate establishment. So if Bernie Sanders was never going to actually run ads showing Joe Biden's, not just his lies, but his record. Jen, correct me if I'm wrong. Bernie Sanders just did a bunch of rallies in Michigan the week before the Michigan primary. I didn't hear once that Joe Biden, as recently as last year, was pushing the Trans-Pacific Partnership, TPP. It's not just that Biden voted for NAFTA. It's that as Obama's vice president, he was championing the TPP deal. He was trying to get Hillary Clinton to stick with the TPP deal when she ran for president in 2016. This wasn't mentioned by Bernie Sanders. I'm not a political person. I'm a journalist. But if you're Bernie Sanders, you bring people up on stage whose families have lost their jobs because of NAFTA, whose communities have been decimated because of NAFTA. Show the pain. And he, as a politician, was never willing to do that. He was willing to talk, and he has a consistent speech, but the American people, it's not just that they're uninformed, and we're going to get to why they're uninformed. The majority of Americans do not watch political shows on YouTube. The majority of Americans don't even watch that much CNN, MSNBC. The majority of Americans don't even read the New York Times, the Washington Post. The majority of Americans, frankly, are watching The Real Housewives, are watching National Geographic or Animal Planet, or stuff totally unrelated to politics, the majority of Americans are not political animals like you and I. The majority of Americans work either one job where they're working 50 to 60 hours a week, or working 2 to 3 jobs and raising kids. So the majority of Americans, I don't honestly blame the people that are voting against their own interests, which they clearly are doing in places like Michigan and elsewhere. No, when I say I'm not a political person, I mean I'm not a political strategist. Like, I'm not an advisor to a politician's campaign. Obviously, I'm a political person. But the majority of people start paying attention to the elections maybe a week to 2 before the elections. They go online and Google. Maybe they see a couple ads on television. There's a very short window, not only to convince people that you are the guy or gal that's going to fight for them, but to also convince them that the other person is full of shit. The other person has sold you down the river. The other person is a fraud, is a threat to you. That's how the Republican Party has kept power as long as they have, by playing dirty. And that is how the corporate Democratic establishment keeps power, by playing dirty. By the way, Barack Obama's campaign in 2008 against Hillary Clinton, it was hope and change on the front end. Behind the scenes, they played dirty. They ran nasty ads against Hillary Clinton. So did Hillary Clinton against Barack Obama. The nastiest ad that Bernie Sanders has run is Joe Biden and his record on Social Security. As far as I know, he didn't mention TPP once. And you want to know something? Bernie Sanders would not have lost South Carolina by 25 to 30 points if he was willing to do what needed to be done. And that is run ads, go at Joe Biden on working with segregationists in the Senate to stop busing. Bernie Sanders could have went after Joe Biden. Joe Biden made comments in the 1970s. I don't believe the black man should get a leg up to even the race. Joe Biden, besides the crime bill, Joe Biden and his Wall Street favoritism, his bankruptcy bill, Glass-Steagall repeal, not just the Iraq War, all of these economic policies have destroyed the black community. Joe Biden was pushing to get Glass-Steagall repealed. Guess what? The repeal of Glass-Steagall led to the 2008 financial crash. Guess what? The 2008 financial crash disproportionately hurt black Americans. There were more foreclosures of black people's homes than white people's homes. Because the banks' predatory lending was targeted mostly in black and brown communities and poor whites. If Bernie Sanders would have ran ads in South Carolina, would have went at Joe Biden on debate stage, would have had his campaign do it, to go after him on his civil rights lies, to go after him on making up that he participated in civil rights sit-ins. Go to Sean King's Twitter. He's meticulously documented all of the lies that Joe Biden has told. Hope you enjoyed that last video. Hop on over to statuscoup.com where you can sign up for our email list and become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Membership is how we grow. That's statuscoup.com/join. And remember, join our email list so we can grow the revolution with you.